Hello, I'm Ian Henschke and welcome to Stateline South Australia. We'll be crossing to Renmark a bit later, but first, as you can see, we're in a storm right here in Penola in the southeast. Now this weekend, more than 5 million Catholics will be celebrating the canonisation of Mary MacKillop. Now, most saints are associated with miracles, but Mary MacKillop's life was associated with orderliness. She was in fact a woman who worked amongst the poor and the needy. Now, she didn't lead a cloistered life, and she battled the authorities. Now, I'm standing outside the school in Penola where she started her teaching career, and also this is the town where her life as a nun began.
Mary MacKillop was born in Melbourne in 1842, but faced difficult times after her father spent the family fortune. She left school at 14 and worked as a clerk to support her family, then taught in Portland before moving to Penola to work as a governess for her uncle and aunt. The teenager wanted to be a nun, but she couldn't find an order that suited her. She soon started teaching the poor local children, and she teamed up with the local priest, Father Julian Tennyson Woods, to open Australia's first free Catholic school. Together with Father Woods, she started the Sisters of St Joseph.
The cat drinks milk.
The cat drinks milk.
Good.
Her remarkable story was dramatised as one of Mike Willis's Australians TV series in 1988. It showed how within a decade she had established dozens of schools, but then she was excommunicated by the Bishop of Adelaide for insubordination.
Mary MacKillop, I pronounce you cast from the arms of your church, stripped of all rank and damned in the eyes of God and heaven.
But the most recent documentary, screened on the ABC Compass program last Sunday, revealed how some of her Josephite nuns running a school at Kapunda had reported their local priest to the church hierarchy, alleging he was a pedophile. This started a chain of events which led to Mary MacKillop's excommunication in September 1871. Many schools were closed, but they reopened after she was absolved by the bishop and readmitted to the church 5 months later. This version of events has been confirmed by the order last month and adds a new dimension to her story. By the time she died in 1909, there were St Joseph schools all over Australia. In 1925, the order started the first moves to have her made a saint. 85 years later, after a lengthy process, the troublemaker and champion of the poor, who gave the church hierarchy so much grief that they threw her out, is now going to be Australia's first Catholic saint.
Well, now I've moved inside, and we're inside the room where Mary MacKillop lived while she was a nun in Penola in 1867. And we're just going to move through into the classroom where she taught. And of course, teaching is such an important part of the Josephite tradition. And one of the special guests who's down here for the celebrations this weekend is Sister Eunice Barry. She's been a Josephite nun for 68 years, and I spoke to her earlier about what life in the order that was founded by Mary MacKillop means to her. When did you stop teaching?
Well, 2 years ago, 19...
Sister Eunice Barry is 86 years old. Like Mary MacKillop, she started teaching as a teenager when she first joined the order in 1943. In a teaching career spanning almost 70 years, she's taught all over South Australia. And she's one of the few Josephite nuns who still wears the traditional habit. And she's only too happy to explain its symbolism.
The symbol of the Josephites does look a bit like the ABC symbol. Can you explain what the symbol means?
Well, the blue monogram was M for Mary and A for Ave Maria. And the 3 J's stand for Jesus, Joseph, and John the Baptist, because Mary MacKillop had a great devotion to St. John the Baptist, I think because he too was a strong character.
What do you think the Josephites have done in Australia?
I think they've helped the poor people to get back some of their dignity, to make sure that they are important people, especially the children, to restore their dignity and to take their place in the world, you know, as people, not just the underdog.
So the Josephites have always had this strong tradition of helping the poor.
They have, and also helping at school, always a child that couldn't work. They're the ones that you kind of concentrate on to reach their potential I think that's another strong point of Josephites.
Now, you were teaching until you were 85 years old, so you must have taught thousands of children.
I have. And I can remember at the junior 8 making that resolution that I'd never have my own children. That was one of the things I knew, coming from a big family, but God rewarded me with all those children throughout my life that I've just loved. And Father Honna said here about Dangawari children, you may not do a lot of good, he said, but they'll know that they were loved and they'll take that memory with them. So that's been a consolation.
Where have you taught in South Australia?
At Rosewater, Mount Carmel School, at St Joseph's, Deverton, William Street, Norwood, Beulah Road, Tarawi, Pinaroo, Penola, Nangwarry, Port Lincoln 11 years, twice there, Port Augusta twice, Peterborough, Jamestown and Gladstone. I think that's the lot.
There's hardly anywhere you haven't taught across the state then?
Mostly in the country. I haven't taught many city schools, just about 10 years in the city.
How important is it for the Josephites that this weekend Mary MacKillop is being canonised as a saint?
Well, I think it's important because she stood for Australian values. She stood that the poor people have a right to education. They, especially not only just school, but people, the prisoners, the refugees, should always be behind them to help them, support them, to be Australian, I think.
Now, you had a very long career as a teaching nun. What have you done since you retired?
I visit the sick at the nursing home, usually trying to get one of visits there. I've also helped an Ethiopian family with their homework. The young boy said to me, I was on the street at the bus stop, and he said, do you pray? And I said, yes. He said, would you pray for my father? He's sick in the hospital. So I made it a point to visit the home, and he died some months later, leaving a widow and 11 children. The youngest was only 18 months. So I have been helping, visiting them and supporting them in any way I could.
What's the message that you have about life then? It sounds like if you help people, you have a good life?
Well, yes, you do have it. When you're helping people, you probably get more from people than you give to them. And it also, well, it's just making the world a better place, I hope.
Sister Eunice, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Now, the actual canonisation will take place in Rome on Sunday before tens of thousands of people, but there'll also be celebrations in Adelaide and here in Penola as well. And a couple of hours ago, a concelebrated Mass was held at St Joseph's Church here in Penola by Archbishop Leonard Faulkner. And on Sunday, thousands more are expected for a Mass at 3 o'clock on the oval of the school just at the back of the Mary MacKillop Centre. And earlier I spoke to Claire Larkin about what else will be happening from the Mary MacKillop Centre. Claire, how many people do you think will turn up for the big events on Sunday?
I think there'll be about 5,000.
So what, the town's population will quadruple?
It will. We're about 1,200, so there's going to be a lot of people around.
And what's the order of the day?
Well, we've got celebrations all day on Sunday. The town will really be in festive mode. We'll be showcasing the region's food and wine. There'll be stalls around the street. There's a children's parade I'm really looking forward to. About 200 children dressed in period costume, skipping their way down the street with school bells ringing.
And at the end of that, you've got a very special flag-raising ceremony.
We have a very special flag that was brought out to us by Tim Fisher in August and presented to us. That's the Vatican flag.
So you'll be flying the Vatican flag in the town?
In Penola, yes. That's a real honour to have that flag.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ian.